just because. Yeah,
we need to have the Wednesday calls.
What else will you do with all of your time?
Exactly.
So thanks so much again to our deans and to Matthias for this engaging conversation. And what's exciting is it really ties in so nicely, as if it was planned, to the very next speaker. So I'm going to have to ask you to leave now. Because our next speaker is someone else who I also have the fortune of spending time with every single week on a call together with Dan and Maddie. GBSN, which if you attended the members meeting, you would have seen, possibly known ahead of time. Deutsche Post DHL are one of two corporate partners that we have, corporate members that we have of the Global Business School Network, the other being EcoBank Academy. And Sarah, of course, I know shared a lot about the fellowship program that we work on together, that we launched for the first time this year, and applications, I'll give another plug, are open again for the 2023-2024 intake. And Sarah's going to continue very much along this theme of how do we measure impact, and specifically from a corporate perspective, how DHL measures impact. So let me very briefly just introduce Sarah more fully. She's the head of knowledge management for GoTrade at Deutsche Post DHL and has been with the group for 11 years now, holding various positions in the field of sustainability, HR, and market research. Before joining DHL, Sarah worked at the University of Bonn. I can say she's very much a frustrated academic. She is an academic, but a frustrated, I think, academic to the sense that she feels and hopes that she wishes she was in it, fully immersed for most of her day. So, Sarah, I know you're relishing this time. Welcome, and we look forward to an engaging session.
Thank you so much. Hi. Good afternoon. I'm really delighted and thrilled to see so many of you, as well as online. So, and if you hope to lean back, and enjoy, and listen, I have to disappoint you, because I would like to have your input, your experience, and to know what you're eventually doing or thinking about how to measure impact, because this is basically a nut we would like to crack. And we haven't yet got our head around how to do that. And let me just quickly introduce a couple of slides before I would like to open the floor to you. So basically, why do we want to measure actually impact? First of all, this is the ultimate goal of our sustainability programs, that we have societal impact. And this is probably more easier said than done, because it has been stated, and everyone is really committed to deliver. But in the end, do we know that we had impact? I don't know. We actually don't really know in the long term that our programs have delivered the impact we imagined. Second, of course, we are a private company. We do have several stakeholders, and they also expect, what we are doing in terms, especially in terms of sustainability programs. That's great that we are doing this, but, what is eventually the outcome? But not only the outcome, but in the end, do you have an impact as well? Is it actually something what we, would call the return on investment? Did it make sense? And last but not least, of course, we committed to the Sustainable Development Goals, at least to some of them, as you see here. And in a couple of years, 2030, probably not the UN comes to us and asks us how we delivered on the Sustainability Development Goals. But in the end, we probably have to look each other in the eye and, see if we eventually did make an impact on those as well. So let me focus on a specific sustainability program, and probably some of you know it from Monday. It's called GoTrade. GoTrade is basically the youngest sustainability program we have in the company. It's 2 years young, but we are quite dynamic and active, I have to say. It's all about trade facilitation. And one major pillar of GoTrade is SME capacity building, as you see here. We have two main programs for now, and one is basically training. So we are training entrepreneurs and all around the world eventually, because we are a global company and 220 countries and regions all over the world. We are training them on what we know best, which is logistics. So basically, we develop a curriculum of several modules, 9 in total for now, and it's up to still development. First of all, on really international trade, it's on e-commerce. It's how to get your head around as a small and medium-sized enterprise on customs and on compliance. You know, it's all about it. It's also very practical. How do I fill out a waiver? You know, stuff like that. And the other part is on business skills. So it's knowing your customer. It's about financial skills. It's about change management and also how to really build up a great team. And the second main pillar we developed together with GBSN is the fellowship program. And this is a way longer program. This is a 12-month program where we eventually match entrepreneurs with students from business schools for a one-on-one relationship. Think of, you know, kind of consulting, mentoring relationship over this 12-month period. And additionally to this kind of core of the fellowship program, we also offer training opportunities. They have to kind of report on their progress to a board of DHL managers, to our friends and colleagues from GBSN, to our DHL colleagues on the ground. So that's basically where we would like, you know, to really deep dive in more. What kind of impact do we have? We are rolling it out to more and more countries, touching more and more entrepreneurs. And in the end, did it matter and did it make a difference? So we try to get our head around it a little bit. Taking the theory of change as a first kind of, you know, not framework, but how to structure ourselves is we quite know well, you know, our input, of course. We are very good at that, you know. We are also good at the output side. So we have our KPIs. How many SMEs did we train, you know, and how many, you know, learning journals we produced, and so on and so on. It gets a bit more tricky than on the outcome side. So we kind of, our vision is, as you see here, especially when we think of the fellowship program, since this is really a long-term program in comparison to kind of short intervention of having those trainings, is, you know, entrepreneurs have the skills and know how to leverage, you know, international trade and grow their business. And of course, we always have to think also on the student side, are we making the impact and eventually having them also to benefit really from the program, having the knowledge to also how to operate in sometimes very ill-defined economies. And you see here, it gets even more trickier. We have kind of a vision on our impact. You know, entrepreneurs are more resilient. You know, they stay in business. However, when it comes, and this might also be kind of measurable. I can see in 5 years down the line if they're still in the business. But additionally, you know, did it make a difference in terms of job creation? And what does it actually mean if you create jobs? Do they have more, you know, income? And then coming more to the trickier question, what do they do with this income? You know, do they have a positive impact on their communities? And so I have the strong assumption that we are not the only one trying to think about how to measure impact. And we heard this before in the last panel, you know, it's kind of something that goes around and you hear a lot, you read a lot. Of course, I talk also to international organizations we are cooperating with. You know, it's all about impact measurement, but no one can tell me how to actually do this. How can we actually put a measurement, a framework into place to see, and I didn't intentionally put a time frame in there, you know, because I don't know how long do we have to measure in order to see, did we had an impact? So, and this is where I would like to stop, basically, to give it back to you and open the floor on, you know, your experience, probably your approach, probably you already cracked the nut somehow, you know, and give me some input how we can tackle this in the end, because we are very ambitious. We want to see if we make an impact, and probably not, I don't know. And also along the way, learn, you know, what is working and what's not working, because we have to adapt. This is not a static program, you know, what we are doing, but we have to also, of course, adapt and see and look each other in the eye as well. If this is not kind of what we envisioned, then we have to change it. So I'm looking into staring, you know, blank faces. Yeah, I would love to hear what you are actually thinking of, you know, impact measurement, of anything you can think of, how we can tackle that.
So I think one way, there are a couple of things that you can be tracking. You can be tracking how many of the SMEs that start with you actually complete the program. You can, and then you can ask them on a regular basis, you know, every year, how things are going. And some of it will be just opinion feedback on, is this helping my business? Some of it would be asking for specific measurements about how their business is growing in terms of revenue, net income, in terms of job creation. But it's a matter of just tracking, quote unquote, your alumni, how they're doing by asking them.
Thank you very much. And that's a good point. If I may just add something on that one. Well, from a person perspective, what I would think it would be more a qualitative approach. Probably I'm overthinking things, and my boss would probably tell me, Sarah, you're overthinking again. However, how do I kind of distinguish between what is happening, you know, being part in the program, and then along the line, how can I attribute what's happening 3 years time to that they actually have been in the program? So how can I do that? Is there any way to do that? Or do I have to live with the assumption that what is in 3 years time might become because they have been in the program?
Well, I can address a couple of thoughts on this. So one thing that I've been thinking a lot about this space as well, and I think there's some interesting work to be done maybe in talking with your participants, with the SMEs themselves who know their local context really well, to find out what are the problems that they would like to address. Why are they even going to your program? And if you can, it might not be, you know, exactly the same in different communities, but different communities are going to have different problems. And so having an impact might look different depending on where the participants are coming from. So that's one thought. I imagine you've already looked at like logic models and sort of a theory of change, but there are lots and lots of examples that if you don't have that, or if it's not fresh in your mind, you can find tons of really helpful examples online. But one of the, I think, principles of that is to look at sort of short-term, medium-term, and long-term outcomes or impacts, and breaking it down in some ways like that, I think can be helpful.
Right, thank you so much. One thought on also the different communities, we were also thinking about, can we compare also what is happening if we run the program in Ecuador and if we run the program in Nigeria, for example? So because the economic circumstances are different, right? And you mentioned it, even on community level, you know, it might be very different. So how can we come to a conclusion for a global program, that we have an impact, or do we have to break it down on whatever level we can think of to see if we have been successful?
Okay, Savannah from Porto Business School. First of all, congratulations on the initiatives. I think that we cannot separate. You're creating an ecosystem. It's going to be very hard to get your input and separate from the other things that have happened. One thing I've seen in Brazil and has helped, it's like if you compare the societies or the group of people that you are not helping, if you have a SMEs that you're not able to help for this or that matter, and then in 3 years period, how have they developed without your inputs? Because then you can compare against, it's hard to say they have achieved this because of me or my program, but what happened to those who were not affected by my program? How did they, so maybe that's a way to compare also.
Thank you so much. I have one personal question here, because we discussed this internally to have kind of this comparison group. Is this something ethical? If you basically give one kind of, let's call it a treatment to one group, which is, it might be very beneficial, and basically asking another group, to be tracked, but they don't get this kind of intervention treatment whatsoever.
Hello, Elizabeth here. I'm just intrigued, and I'd like to actually continue with what Savannah and the other colleague are talking about. We've been talking about partnerships, and here you are with very rich data. And I would like you to consider this seriously, partnering with these institutions, academic institutions. And this you surely should be able to get to the theory of change that you're talking about, the treatment and control. This is a classic example of an RCT, perhaps, where you'd be able to remove the whatever is the circumstances that are not necessarily your program related. And you can still do the same thing through this partnership. So you're talking about other countries, Nigeria, and also you do the same thing. And with RCTs, we've been able to actually come to some kind of, common lines. So you, in the end, would be able to talk of pathways and theories of change and really saying whether what you're doing is making an impact. But I see rich data, which we really struggle to get. So my suggestion, definitely partnering with these academic institutions, business schools are here. This is where we want industry and academic, industry and business. But please, let's just work with them and get these rich data to our students, and we'll be able to do that. RCT, treatment control, but in the different settings, Africa, Asia, wherever you are, you should be able to get a partner. I have seen this kind of work before, and I believe partnership with the academic institutions is going to be the way to go. We're here, at least in the first one to jump on.
Thank you. And yes, definitely. I mean, we are not a research institution, right? We are a logistics provider. We are just curious. And of course, we cannot do it without an academic partner. And as I said, yes, we do have probably data which might be not available to everyone,
Adrian here from Lagos Business School. And so we did something similar with techpreneurs in conjunction with Henley Business School in the UK. And what we realized was, first of all, it's important to question who has access, right, to this program. So there needs to be some sort of selection criteria. And then perhaps those people that didn't meet the selection criteria can be not really a test case, but you can say, okay, what other things can we help them with and what can we do? But what we also found that was important was that throughout the course, so we spoke about this, we did something quite similar, is that we had feedback sessions. So we're asking them, what did you think? What did you wish you knew before this session? What did you learn? So that way you could also really iterate what you were teaching in the next session, so that way they also felt like it was adapting to their needs and meeting them, but that provided us feedback to know where we needed to also change things and what impact we were having. But it's important as well that there is some sort of assessment at the end, and it doesn't have to be an exam, but there has to be something that they're working towards that. So for our case, because they're techpreneurs, they wanted to also be investment ready. So we had some sort of investment readiness committee that was created by, we had LBS, MBA alumni. We also had people from this, from the business community as well as academics. And that way they knew that they needed to present to this to say, okay, this is how my organization is better now. This is what we have done. And that really helped us to also have this theory of change at a very short-term level at the end of the course. Because what's difficult is, like you said, 3 years down the line, 4 years down the line, the environment changes so much. How do you also then track this type of things? So I think that's really something that you can also look to do. So basically, having a strong feedback loop throughout the program, which really helps you to gather data, and then having something that they have to work towards to not necessarily be certified, but to have some sort of, this is what we have achieved through this program.
And that's a very good point. Thank you very much, because we have been thinking about that as well. We, meaning us and GBSN, how to, in the end, that we would like to see also kind of a short summer, however we call it in the end, what they worked on, what they learned, where they started, and the different steps as well. So we basically can track it as well. And of course, the beauty is we are just starting it. So we piloted this year in 4 countries. And I said it on Monday already, to a bit of dance surprise, I would say, probably / shock. We will scale it up to 14 countries next year. So, and that's really the beauty of it. We are currently starting it. So we are in the right time and place to really implement, and think about how we can measure it. So, I don't want to have this program 5 years down the line and then thinking, oh, probably we should have measured something before. But now it's really the right time to do that. Yeah.
Okay. I think I wanted to share the same thing that we did as implementing partners with Maryland University and Bocconi University in Italy, Maryland in the US, and we did the RCT, the randomized control trials. I remember in the beginning, I was really skeptical about ethical issues. How can we train people differently while we know maybe certain ways were already found to be more impactful? But we had 250 companies that we worked with, from the ones who were in ideation stage up to a startup at a certain level. And the attribution problem, we'll work on it because we had 3 treatments, 2 that were intervening and 1 that was a control. And I don't think that we are going to have a problem with attribution. And qualitatively, we are going to do it quantitatively, but qualitatively, we went back to those companies every 2 weeks and tried to talk to them, starting from the baseline survey in the beginning and even turning points that we thought they would have using our intervention. So it is really possible to do this without really thinking about not being able to attribute or the ethical issues, because definitely what you are bringing in is new to them and they wouldn't get it if you are not doing the research. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, I got the sign. Thank you very much for your input and your attention. So please feel free to reach out to either the GBSN team or myself if you have any further input or ideas, or think about our data. So I'm happy to hear from you. Thank you very much.